Welcome to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast for club owners, operators, and fitness professionals. Each week, host Bryan O'Rourke brings you an expert interview with a global influencer at the crossroads of fitness and technology. You gain the insights, tools, and inspiration you need to stay connected to the pulse for what matters most for your business in the age of exponential technologies.
Hello, listeners, and thanks for joining us today. Of course, the news around the world in the last more than a month in Europe, Asia, beginning in China in December, and the U.S. is having a catastrophic impact on the fitness industry for all the good that we do out there to help people live healthy lives. A lot of government action has shut down our businesses, and a lot of club owners and operators are dealing with a lot of difficulty right now. So to try to be helpful, I started reaching out to professionals we respect on all sides of the coin. And in the next few weeks, we'll be sharing some interviews with folks, getting their take, sharing their thinking on how we deal with this. Because this is gonna end at some point, and it's difficult for people to cope with this. So, on this particular episode, and I'm so glad you're joining us, we're going to have Garrett Marshall with Exponential, the 1,700 location, 8-brand conglomerate, Club Pilates and more, on talking about what they're doing. My friend Mike Leveque from My Zone sharing his insights. Of course, we have Paul Bedford, the retention guru. He did a great video that was posted on LinkedIn. We'll share that in the link with some good ideas of how to deal with members and what to keep in mind. And then finally from Trainer Raj Sharad, who's with our board at FitSy, and he shares some thinking and ideas about some approaches, especially using digital. So we're gonna release these interviews. They're gonna come 4 of them in this one, and then next week we're gonna have some other guests that I'll share talking about marketing and other things that you can be doing now and want to keep in mind as this situation evolves and as we eventually make it back. But before I get into these interviews, listen, if there's anything I can do, my empathy goes out and to all of you out there who listen to this show, many thousands of you, I'm sending best wishes to you and yours. I know this is very challenging. We're going to work together. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to see you all at URSA or at FIBO. This too shall pass. So if you need anything from me, or you want to talk, or you want to share any thoughts about this, Bryan K. O'Rourke on all the major social channels, or Bryan K. O'Rourke at Gmail. Please feel free to reach out. I hope these interviews from these 4 leaders in the global space will be of help to you. And we will broadcast another one of these next week. So let me know your thoughts. So without further ado, let's get to the interviews. Thanks. Well, listeners, in this first podcast on Corona, one of the people I wanted to reach out to, as I talked to in the intro, is Garrett Marshall. I've known Garrett and had the pleasure of working for a long time. And now in his role in biz dev and strategy for Exponential, which has 8 brands, and almost 1,800 operating locations, he was so kind to spend time. Garrett, thank you for reaching out and being available for our audience today. We really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
And so, the purpose of this podcast is just to share some insight with operators around the world about how they're reacting, what they're thinking, how, so many of them are shut down, but unfortunately, but there's going to be a reemergence. What are you doing with the Exponential brands like Cycle Bar, Club Pilates, and many others? What have been your strategies? What can you talk about and share about technologies? What's going on in your side of the world?
Well, I think we're really trying to figure that out hour by hour. There are a few structural things that we've committed to doing from the onset, and we've sort of followed that cadence along the way. I could talk about a couple of those things. I think right now there's just so much hysteria. There's no question that there is hysteria fueling this. It's just a question of to what extent. So, we've found that really the most valuable thing that we can do for our franchise system is really try to help them separate fact from fiction and provide, some clarity during this time of uncertainty. So I can just touch on a couple of those things. Our CEO, Anthony Geisler, is holding a webinar, sort of a state of the state type webinar every 48 hours. And that's sort of a catch-all where he's been providing corporate updates on things like closures, regional updates, and as a standard element of that webinar, he's touched on system-wide KPIs, things like attendance, visits, cancellations, freezes, and those kind of things. So I think that's helped a lot because it answers a lot of the questions and addresses a lot of the chatter that sometimes can become a perpetual circle or game of telephone. So that's been really helpful, and he's doing that, as I said, every 48 hours. We've also identified 4 scenarios that sort of escalated a range in severity, everything from a studio or franchise location that thinks that they've been exposed to the virus through contact with staff potentially or a member, all the way to the more severe extreme of the spectrum where you have a location that has involuntary closure. And we've built out 4 toolkits to address those scenarios with a collection of sort of like operational, revenue side and expense side guidance for our franchise partners.
And go ahead. I'm sorry. Please.
Didn't mean to cut you off. So digitally, we're trying a few different things, and the idea has basically been just to meet our members where they are. We, I think, if you were to put us on one end of the spectrum or the other, we've taken the simplicity side of that spectrum, just in a real desire to get to our members quickly and also support our franchise partners.
Makes great sense. And so when did you, it may not be relevant now, but when did you all start realizing this is what it has become? Was this happening a few weeks ago, a week ago? And how proactive were you? I mean, in retrospect, we all were kind of caught cold a little bit, but how did your organization process this? And obviously your communication strategy is brilliant, because the level of quality communication in a chain like this is probably more important now than it ever was. But how did your management team and leadership coalesce around this in the last week?
Yeah, I would say, it was probably 2.5 weeks ago where we started having a regular discussion internally. And as an international brand, we started to look at groups like Starbucks and Apple and see what that progression or wave looked like on an international scale, particularly with China, to try to get our hands around what the scope of this might be. And then as I touched on earlier, I think what's made this interesting is there's been new information, it feels like every hour. So even with our toolkits and what we're doing digitally, we've had to recalibrate that almost every single day. So we did make a deliberate decision to not over communicate and stick to a 48-hour schedule, so that we could be more formally prepared and not have the entire team speaking from a unified place.
That's a very, I think, wise piece of advice for any organization, right? Because you can just get swallowed up by the back and forth through these, the change, versus having a disciplined strategy where you set a calendar time, everyone knows, right, that's where the cadence of communication is going to be. That's very, very wise. Would that be a part of what you would recommend highly that brands think of doing today, right now, with given what's going on?
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's probably different from brand to brand, how to find that balance of timeliness, communication, but also, making sure that you don't get out of your skis on what you communicate. As I said, for us, we found that, there have been a number of situations where exposure has been assumed. So we've had a member call a franchise location and say, I think I was, I'm a student as an example, and I think I sat next to someone who tested positive for COVID-19, and come to find out, as we follow that daisy chain, it was somebody who was a sibling of somebody who was expected to have COVID but never got tested. Um, I think that's been something that's really been important for us, is like help our team, almost coach them how to sort of navigate down the fairway, because it's so easy, if you're following the news, to be on extreme ends of the spectrum with the regular updates. So trying to help them find that, have some clarity in the times of uncertainty has been important.
Yeah. And with your background in digital, which you had an extensive background in digital before your current role, in streaming content and other programming with clubs and other verticals, do you think this may be a linchpin, kind of like a moment where there's going to be a separation with brands that have gone omni-channel versus strictly in club?
I do, and I think that has been evidenced by how quickly some brands are trying to respond to the opportunity or realize its importance. I think at minimum, it's going to provide a differentiator for the brands that are prepared. I know that we're in the process. We're in an interesting space because we have a couple brands that we acquired that had legacy digital offerings, and we've consolidated that, and we're in the process of formally launching. I guess you could say we've soft launched that. So we have legacy platform and we have the new world. And so like trying to manage that when, as soon as we put together a formal program for addressing this across our entire system, the first thing that we did was we gave all members 60-day access to our digital platform for free. And again, we sort of sat in a room and said, let's err on the side of simplicity. There are going to be hard costs associated with this, but what's important right now is that we try to stop the bleeding and, give our members, our products are all positioned as a premium in their markets, so they're higher cost products, and we thought it was important just to give them that opportunity to continue to engage with us. We've also been streaming since Monday morning live on Facebook, and it's not a gated experience. It's kind of there for everyone. And we thought, let's just proven platform can handle the bandwidth. We didn't have any concerns that something might fail, so we just went to Facebook Live and kept it simple. And initially, we were broadcasting 2 to 3 live streams per brand over this week, but the response was so well validated that this morning we went to every single brand all day, every day. And our first stream this morning, I think, was at 8 Pacific time, which was Pure Bar, and we had about 3,000 viewers live during that stream. And last time I checked, which was before lunch, we had 12 or 13,000 viewings since it initially aired this morning. So yeah. I think that is just good evidence that this is a need that people have. Lots of people are home right now, and they're finding value in it. So to the original question, I think there's the proof is in the pudding right now. We're seeing the results of that.
Well, Garrett, any other final thoughts? First off, again, I want to thank you for making time for our listeners of 30,000 people who subscribe to us around the world in this industry space. And you're one of the first guys I reached out to connect with, to help. Any other final thoughts?
I don't think so. It's a great pleasure. Thanks for reaching out, and anytime I can help, let me know.
Well, listen, our thoughts, prayers, and go out to you and your family, the entire Exponential team, your members, your franchisees. It's going to be challenging times. I know we're going to make it through, but hopefully your words and examples of what you're doing at Exponential can be helpful to people out there who are trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do about all this. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of uncertainty. I know it's going to turn out all right. So your insights, I know and hope, will be valuable to many of our colleagues out there.
Me too. Thanks, Bryan.
Hello, listeners. And another great guest for this podcast on this unprecedented coronavirus is my dear friend, the retention guru, the foremost expert on retention in the world in our industry space, Dr. Paul Bedford. Paul, thanks for making time on short notice. I absolutely loved your video with your daughter about the boxing club, because so many operators around the world are wrestling with this question. Thanks for making time.
Oh, you're welcome, Bryan. And I hope anything I share, I hope it's just useful, because I can appreciate lots of operators are really challenged by the current situation.
Indeed. Paul, I'm going to put the link for the audience of your video and your content, which is outstanding. It's so practical. I think people need practical advice and thoughts. So thanks for making time. Can you give some ideas around this, a little bit about where it came from?
Yeah, it was Saturday morning. My daughter does boxing and kickboxing, and she's a small owner-operated business, and the owners were standing there chatting to me in reception. They know what I do. I've been for a while. And they said, Paul, what are we going to do? What are we going to do if we have to close the club? Really anxious about their business, their customers, the effect it's going to have on them long term. You know, single site operator, small, very intimate, but really, really well run. And I said, look, you go run the lesson. Give me some time to gather my thoughts. I'll work something out for you. And while I just sat in the reception of the club, I just sat there and I pulled this presentation together, and you know, within 45 minutes, I had the presentation. I took them through it after the lesson and said, look, focus on these things. It was quite rough and ready. I then went home, spent some time just trying to make it look a little bit more presentable. And then just started sharing it and saying to people, look, you know, if you want to watch the video, it's here. If you're not, it's at my website. If you're not comfortable directing people to my website, here's the link to the Vimeo version. And you can embed it in your link and share it with your customers, because, you know, I appreciate, you know, that some really big organisations have got behind this already. You know, people like MyZone, Dave Wright shared it. And he's got an extensive list. I don't expect him to point all his customers at Retention Guru. I just wanted to get it out there to help as many people as I could. So I thought there's no point in just doing it for the guys at Pearly Boxing. I might as well do it for everybody.
Well, I know you. I've known you for years, and I know that's where your heart's from. So, you know, the purpose of this podcast is to promote what you're doing to help people. And so, can you give us the kind of the Reader's Digest version, and then we'll have the link in the podcast?
I just sat there and I thought, okay, this is going to happen to organisations in 3 phases. Now, if you're in Europe, you've already gone through phase 1. Phase 1 is people reducing their exercise, or governments or organisations taking the decision to close their businesses down. Now, I know Basic Fit this week or yesterday announced they've closed 820 locations, and so many sites are going to move into lockdown really quickly. So I was like, okay, what do? You just need to recognise who the customers are that are keeping coming, who are the ones in your database who are still active, because you want to communicate with your active database list, not just everybody on your database, because that might spook any sleepers into cancelling and so on. The next phase is the isolation phase, and that'd be where people are choosing not to come to the club. And my advice to operators was keep in contact with your active list, tell them what you're doing, show them what you're doing. If you're cleaning, show them you're cleaning. If you're doing more than you need to, show them you're doing that. But keep giving them advice, because the thing that we understand from the work we've done is if you break someone's routine, getting them back again can take a very long time. So it was all about keep the routine going, even messaging people, look, if you normally train on Monday night at 6 o'clock, train at Monday night on 6 o'clock, because that's the space in your diary that you've already got. Rather than thinking, well, I could do it any time now, I'm not going. So you want to keep the routine going, because as soon as that routine breaks, people fill in that time of our activities. And, you know, when everything passes over, they've now busy on that time. So the second phase was about, it was when they were in isolation. And then in the returning phase, it was about keep communicating with them, but really show them that people are coming back. Make short little clips of videos, video testimonial, someone working out, then getting them talking about what they've done in that work. So it's really good to be back. First workout, feel great. Things are moving forward. That was the gist, the 3 phases. And so I know, like North America at the moment, Australia, I know some areas of North America, they're already starting to lock down and say no going to the gym. It just, get ahead of it. If you can, get ahead of it. That was my thinking.
No, and it's so true. And I know, Paul, that, our thoughts are with you all and all of our colleagues in the UK and Europe in general. And I know you have many people you influence. I loved your video. I thought it was very practical and real. Tell me, how's it going over there right now for you?
For me personally, I've just watched a huge amount of dates of work disappear, which I understand because operators are trying to make sense of how they're going to keep their businesses going. We've just had Virgin Atlantic announce that they're asking their crews to take 8 weeks unpaid leave. So that suggests to me there's going to be no transatlantic for 8 weeks. Some people are panic buying and just being stupid. Most people are just being very practical and going, what do we do to help our neighbours? What do we do to help ourselves? What do we do to help our neighbours? Clubs, interestingly for me, the smaller clubs and the smaller operators are putting content out there. Yeah. The big ones seem to have been really quiet, which I'm surprised. Now, whether they're trying to work out what to do relative to their business, I don't know. But I'm surprised I haven't seen from the big box premium operators almost anything. But I've seen lots from little clubs who are taking lots of practical action. One thing I did see over the weekend, which I absolutely loved, and I wish I'd captured it at the time, there was a question from someone at Chelsea Piers, a customer, Chelsea Piers in New York. I believe they've closed the club, and a customer had messaged him on socials saying, what are you going to do to compensate me for the time that I'm not going to be able to exercise? The next comment was from a member saying, I'm not looking for compensation. Just make sure you pay your staff. And for me, I was like, that's humanistic. That is recognizing people are being challenged. And some thoughts I've even had today were, I actually think the smaller organizations are going to be the ones that get the biggest hit. But I also think they're probably the ones who customers are going to stay loyal to. And if you haven't created that loyalty already, if you're just providing a transactional situation where I pay an access and that's what you think of me, then there's no loyalty there and people will cancel. If you've got a club or a site where people have, you've created a real sense of community, they'll understand, look, we need to keep charging you, otherwise there won't be a club when you come back. Now, there'll be people who've got financial difficulties who go, but I can't afford it. And I think there'll be a balance there. But I actually think those clubs that have existed just on transaction and not on relationships will get hit hardest now.
Yeah, that's truth. That's wisdom. Paul, it's so kind of you to make time late at night. We're trying to get this out Wednesday. I loved your post. So typical of you in that you give so much. You're a dear friend. Many people love you, and I'm one of them. And so we're just trying to help everyone. I know that's where your heart is. Yeah. And so we thank you so much for your wisdom. You're going to see the linked audience down in the notes. Paul, God bless. Take care of your family. I'm here for you if you need anything.
Cheers, Brian. Take care. All the best to everybody. And I'll see you on the other side.
Yes, sir, we will. We'll get through this. Like your post said, the English, the Brits, they were great at that. What is it? What was that theme?
Carry on.
Yes, indeed. All right, my friend, hold on here. Listeners, our fourth guest in this podcast is a longtime friend, Mike Leveque from MyZone. Mike, I'm so glad you're able to spend time. I mean, you all have thousands and thousands of clubs. You've been in the business a very long time. And as we were talking before we got on, Mike, just helping people get some practical insight information. So I know you're dealing with clients around the world, your team at MyZone. Thanks for making time and giving our listeners some input and thinking on what to do.
Hey, Brian, it's great to be a part of this, and thank you for letting us share our thoughts.
So, Mike, given what's going on, and we were chatting it, I know, a number of your clients, very, very accomplished clients, many of them around the world, they've been adopting your technology at MyZone and giving the ability for them to touch members, whether they're inside and outside of the club. What are you seeing those brands do? Or what other things are you seeing brands do in the marketplace around tech and how they're approaching the situation with their membership?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really interesting because very difficult times are causing the fitness industry's ingenuity to really shine through. And we're seeing a lot of really interesting things bubble up. I think the first and foremost, our clubs are being hit with media and governments talking about social distancing. And what we believe now more than ever, certainly physical distancing is important, but the businesses that will win during this crisis and coming out of the crisis are the ones that do the with social connectivity. So it's not really social distancing that's needed. It's social connection, social cohesion, social connectivity that's needed. And to the extent that you can leverage technology to continue to build relationships with your clients, that's really important. A lot of clubs are closing around the world. How are those clubs maintaining connection with their clients? And to the extent that they do it well, they'll benefit through the crisis and coming out of the crisis.
That's a great answer. And even people who may not have adopted the MyZone technology, and by the way, I showed you earlier, here's my MyZone belt. You see it. And I just finished my workout. I did my 100 MEPs. I'm almost Hall of Fame. I'm getting close. But, not only people that use your technology, which is a great technology for doing what you're doing, but even like Facebook live streaming or, a bunch of other tools that, you could use would be examples of that, right?
Absolutely. And Facebook Live, a lot of clubs are talking about that. There are simple social campaigns you can do. Like if your club isn't open, where did you work out today? Post it on Instagram, post it on our Facebook wall. Making sure that your clients are connected. And that's a fun way to have everyone coming back to your ecosystem and feeling like they're part of a community. Virtual classes, if you have that technology available to you, pushing it out to those clients, but making sure that they're exercising, making sure that they're maintaining their regular program. If there is a way for clients to connect with each other, we see on our platform, the power of social connectivity is awesome. If our clients have 4 or more connections, they'll work out 41% more. If they have 4 or more likes during a month after they work out, another member of staff or another member likes their workout, 80% more. If they get 4 or more comments, which is a richer social interaction, they'll work out 80% more. And so, I think there's this theory of social community or social connection. We can actually see the tangible benefits of social connection to people working out more and staying on their fitness journey.
That's great information for people to understand. That's fantastic. The advantage of using digital in this way, even if it's tough, because as you were mentioning, so many clubs, I know in the U.S. there's going to be probably even more closures in the next few days, right? With states implementing the federal government guidelines. And of course, we know our friends in Italy and France and Spain and the UK and all, around the world that are going through this. But, thinking about digital as a tool to do what you're describing, it's a must right now. As hard as it is, because you're getting hit in the face with a baseball bat, as much as you can do to connect that way digitally, I think that's got to be a big deal for everyone to pay attention to.
Yeah, I think that social connectivity is critical. I think sort of a very close second place to that is gamification. Yeah. Making sure that your members are engaged with your platform through gamification. And, the one thing that we wanted to do during this crisis is start a flash challenge for all of our clubs. April 1st, we're putting $10,000 in a pot. We understand they've got bigger fish to fry. They've got problems in their clubs. They're dealing with rent and closing their clubs up, and how do they stay connected? And so we want to take on some of the heavy lifting of the programming and start a challenge, because the other statistic that we know is members work out 80% more when they're in a challenge. To the extent that we can motivate them through connectivity, through a challenge, and hopefully when the clubs reopen, they'll all go back into the 4 walls of a gym and support their local club again.
Mike, MyZone has been such a great brand, a great solution in the industry for a long time. I so respect not just what your technology is doing as a user and all the clubs it's in, but also how your team approaches the industry space. Dave, you, Emmett, and all of your team. Just great kudos to you guys. Much respect for all you do. I just tons of respect. Are there any other final thoughts you want to share with the audience on how to think about this situation we're in now, unfortunately?
Yeah, the one last thing I would say is we know this won't last. This is a temporary crisis here. We know it won't last. And I was just emailing with our manufacturing team in China. And of course, with disaster recovery, we had a lot of conversations and making sure that our inventory was coming our way and we were fully stocked through the crisis when it hit China. My last email to our manufacturer in China, I said, any supply chain issues, anything happening with your raw materials supply? And he said, no, we're fully up and running, but I understand it's bad over there. What's going on with your demand? So we all heard that it started in China or Wuhan, the province in China that it started in, but they're recovering and we will too. And so this won't last. And so a bit of hope for our customers and other manufacturers in our industry. We know it won't last, and hang in there.
That's great advice, and you're right. And so we're going to all take precautions, but your words of insight and wisdom, I know, are going to be appreciated by many. Again, safety to you, your families, and the MyZone brand and all your clients. We so appreciate what you guys do, and I know a lot of people are going to be very thankful for you taking a few minutes to share your insights.
Hey, anytime, Brian, and happy to hear that you and Maureen and the family are doing well, and take care to you.
Thank you. Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed those 3 interviews. I know in the beginning I mentioned we were going to have Sharad from Trainerize as well. We had a few little technical problems with his interview, so we're going to have Sharad later on in another interview next week, hopefully in our next round. Again, I want to express my support in trying to get, Paul, Mike Leveque, and Garrett on these interviews to give information to folks. If you need any help or you would like to reach out to me, please do. bryankorourke@gmail.com, at bryankorourke, at FitTech Council. We're here to help the best we can. We'll be sharing more information on marketing and other things, hopefully next week. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Remember, we're all going to make it through this, and we're in it together. So keep your chins up, and we'll talk soon. Hello, listeners. This is Bryan O'Rourke, and thanks so much for listening to the Fitness Plus Technology Podcast. The podcast is made possible by the Fitness Industry Technology Council, a consortium of global brands working together to enhance the adoption of technologies in the fitness space. Our company, Videri Ventures, which is invested in Vertimax, Montezuma, Gold's Gym, Houston, Texas, and Fitness 24/7 Thailand, also underwrites the podcast, along with our service companies, Integris Advisors, Moon Mission Media, and others. Please feel free to share this podcast with your colleagues. And if I can be of any assistance to you, don't hesitate to reach out, bryankorourke@gmail.com, or find me on any of the major social networks. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.